Hi, I'm Celine. And my family didn't just cut me out, they made sure I blamed myself while they did it. At my grandfather's funeral, my mother publicly shamed me, and my sister, she clapped. They forged my name on a six-figure loan, erased me from a will, and then sued me for speaking up. The worst part? It wasn't sudden. It was patient. Calculated. They sold the house I grew up in, cleared out my room, sent me a photo like it was a trophy. But here's what I still don't understand. How do the people who claim to love you sleep at night after treating you like a threat? The heat in Charleston was thick that morning, the kind that settles into your skin before you've even stepped out the door. I wore black not because it felt right, but because it was expected. My grandfather's funeral was being held at the same church where I was baptized, where every Anderson generation had been eulogized in front of polished pews and heavy wooden crosses. It should have been a place of comfort. But walking through those doors, I didn't feel like family. I felt like furniture present, but not noticed, useful, but uninvited. The pews were packed. Relatives I hadn't seen in years leaned in close to one another, whispering. Business partners nodded solemnly. A few churchwomen I vaguely remembered from childhood offered me half smiles, the kind that said, "We don't know where to place you." I sat 3 rows back, behind Valora. She'd positioned herself next to Mom, as always. The good daughter, the reliable one, the face of our family. The pastor cleared his throat and welcomed everyone. A soft choir hymn played. Then Mom stepped up to the pulpit. I wasn't expecting that. She wasn't a public speaker, but she looked prepared. Her voice was steady, her makeup untouched by tears. And then she said it. Some of us, she paused just long enough for the air to thicken, were never around, even when it mattered most. A subtle gasp rippled through the room. I felt every eye glance, then shift quickly away. My heart pounded, not from shame but from recognition. That wasn't a passing remark. It was aimed, targeted, and delivered with precision. My aunt stared straight ahead. My father folded his hands tighter. No one looked at me. As Mom stepped down, Valora clapped. Just twice. Sharp, controlled, but loud enough to carry. And that was it. She didn't just agree, she celebrated it. The line was drawn, publicly. After the service, people trickled out slowly. I moved with them, invisible in motion. Outside, I stood by the hydrangeas that lined the path to the church steps. Valora passed me, didn't break stride. "Not everything's about you, Celine," she said, smiling without looking at me. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The taste of bile burned the back of my throat. On the ride home, I couldn't focus. The window beside me blurred the trees, the gravestones, the blue sky. But my mind kept flashing to a moment 2 months ago, the relaunch event for Anderson & Co., our family's furniture business. I had spent weeks working on the digital campaign, rewriting web content, preparing the presentation slides. The new store layout had been my vision, my proposal. I was scheduled to speak at the ribbon cutting. It was on the program. I had rehearsed. 10 minutes before I was set to go on, one of the interns handed me a printed update. "Schedules shifted," he said, without eye contact. Valoris presenting solo. My name was gone. I watched from backstage as she walked out in a beige pantsuit, holding my note cards. My words, my cadence, rehearsed from my mouth, now coming from hers. She looked straight into the crowd, into the cameras, and said, "We are a legacy built on trust." Nobody questioned it. Nobody noticed. That night, I went home, deleted the draft files, and convinced myself I was overreacting. That maybe I hadn't communicated clearly. That maybe it wasn't intentional. But now, after that funeral, after that clap, I knew better. This was forgetfulness. It was poor communication. It was surgical. It was strategy. Back in my car after the service, I sat in silence. The air conditioner hummed. My hands were locked around the steering wheel, though I hadn't turned the key. I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry. I was changed. The applause had done something that years of silence hadn't. It confirmed what I had refused to accept. They were never going to see me, not for who I was, only for what I could absorb for them. And I was done absorbing. I didn't sleep. I kept playing that moment over and over, the sharp clap, valorous grin, my mother's calculated dig. By dawn, I was still wide awake, sitting at the kitchen counter in yesterday's clothes, with coffee that had gone cold twice. I opened my phone without thinking. That's when the notifications hit. I'd been tagged in a dozen posts from friends of the family, former coworkers, local business people. A photo had resurfaced me, standing proudly in front of the Anderson & Cumber storefront during the ribbon-cutting ceremony from last fall. Except I wasn't in the caption. The text read, "Proud of our visionary leader, Valora Anderson, a true force behind the relaunch of our family legacy." My hand trembled, but not from surprise. From the brutal familiarity of it. My body was in the image me smile, my stance, my dress. But Valora's name was stamped beneath it. Again. I clicked through other posts. Same photo, same story, just reshared through different lenses. It wasn't a fluke. It was orchestrated. My name had been removed, rewritten, or bypassed entirely. I set the phone down, pressed the heels of my hands into my eyes. But then, the door buzzed. I wasn't expecting a delivery. Downstairs, a courier handed me a sleek black basket wrapped in ribbon, addressed to Valora Anderson, Head of Strategy. It had come from Halstead & Bennett, a national home decor chain we had tried to partner with months ago. Inside was a handwritten note. "Your vision continues to inspire. T. Gray." I nearly dropped it. T. Gray was my alias me creative signature when I didn't want credit as Celine Anderson. It had started as a playful pseudonym in our shared drive, used on early design files, pitch decks, and brand proposals. Valora knew that. She used to joke about how mysterious it sounded. Now she was using it like it belonged to her. I walked back to my desk, clutching the card, and opened my old project archives. I pulled up the last few newsletters from the companions it helped write. My name was absent. Again. Only hers. I kept scrolling. Press releases, promotional emails, event invitations. Slowly, methodically, I was being erased. At first, it had felt like forgetfulness. A name missed here, a photo captioned wrong there. But now I saw it differently. This wasn't about oversight. It was a strategy, a campaign. My removal wasn't incidental, it was intentional. And I'd let it happen. Valora had always been polished, poised, persuasive. She knew how to smile when cutting someone down. I used to admire her for it. Now I just recognized the shape of the blade. I remembered one conversation in particular. We were sitting at Mom's dining table, sorting through campaign timelines. I had asked gently, "Do you think it would make sense to include my byline on the next press release?" She looked up, tilted her head, and said, "You're really still hung up on credit?" Then she laughed. "Come on, Celine. We're a family, not a LinkedIn page." That moment stayed with me longer than it should have. I stood from my desk, took the gift basket, and placed it in the hallway trash chute. I didn't need the chocolate, or the lavender candle, or the note pretending I didn't exist. Then I opened a new document on my laptop and titled it simply, "Memo to Myself." I typed, "If it happens again, I confront." No more swallowing it, just to keep the peace. But as soon as I hit save, I knew the truth. The confrontation was already overdue. They hadn't just stolen my ideas, they'd constructed an entire false version of events and placed Valora at the center. She didn't earn her spotlight, she climbed into it using my shoulders, and had been complicit in my own erasure. Not anymore. I didn't want to be part of a family that needed to erase me to shine. They hadn't just erased me. They signed my name on something I never agreed to, and the bank knew. The silence I gave them for years had become their license. Now it would become my evidence. I was sipping my second cup of coffee, trying to find the strength to open emails again, when the notification from my credit monitoring service lit up. "New inquiry detected," it read, followed by a flagged alert. My pulse quickened, not from fear, but the sense that something was coming, and it wasn't going to be small. I logged into my account, heart thudding. A loan had been approved 2 months ago, 6 figures. My name listed as co-signer. I scrolled, reread, checked again. The borrower? Anderson and Co. They hadn't even changed the address. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I picked up my phone and called the bank. It took 3 transfers before someone connected me to a loan officer who recognized the case. I kept my voice level, professional. I need to verify how this loan was signed. I don't recall ever authorizing this. She was polite. She promised transparency. She scheduled an appointment for the next morning. That night, I barely slept. The questions echoed louder than dreams. Did they forge my name? Did Valora do it alone? Did my parents know? By 9 a.m., I was sitting across from a woman in a navy blazer who had a file already pulled and waiting. "We do have your digital signature on file, Ms. Anderson," she said. "It's time-stamped from March 17th. I looked at the line she pointed to. My name, my signature, my supposed approval. But it wasn't real. "I didn't authorize this," I said. "That looks like a scan of my signature from a 2021 agreement. I never signed anything this year." She nodded, almost sympathetically. "Unfortunately, that's not uncommon in family businesses. If you'd like to initiate a fraud review—" "Yes," I interrupted. "I would." I left the bank with a hollow kind of fire in my chest, quiet but dangerous. Back home, I walked out onto the small balcony of my apartment. The sky was heavy, and so was my body. I leaned on the railing, eyes drifting toward the corner where my cactus sat. It had been with me since college, a gift from Valora, back when we still pretended to like each other. Now it was brown, wilted, almost caved in on itself. I moved closer. The soil looked off too dark, damp. I bent down. The smell hit me. Coffee. Someone had poured old coffee into the pot. Maybe it was me, distracted. Maybe not. It didn't matter. Like everything else that had once been mine, it had been quietly ruined. I set the pot aside and walked back in. That afternoon, I called my mother. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, Mom," I said calmly. "Did you know I was listed on the business loan?" There was a pause. Then the familiar tone, soft, carefully phrased, designed to disarm. "We just assumed you'd want to help. You've always been the responsible one." That word assumed carried more weight than she knew. She hadn't asked. She hadn't warned. She just assumed it'd carry it, like always. I didn't sign it. Another pause. "Well, the company needed it, sweetie. We were in a tight spot. And you didn't think to mention it?" "It wasn't meant to upset you," she said. "Don't make this into more than it is." I didn't respond. I ended the call. My father never reached out. Valora didn't either. They stayed quiet, as if silence might count as innocence. But I was done mistaking absence for grace. That evening, I opened a private folder in my drive. I labeled it Records. I began uploading every document I'd emails with Valora, copies of the speech she stole, photos of the showroom event, the credit notice, my phone logs. I scanned every paper related to the company. At the bottom of a draft, I typed a single line. They used my name without asking. This time, they'll see what it costs. Link to next chapter. My name was never theirs to use, especially not to bury me under their mistakes. Continuing the content of the previous chapter, they hadn't just erased me. They signed my name on something I never agreed to and the bank knew. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was documentation. It was paper trails. It was liability. And now, finally, it was mine to hold. I wasn't clutching at feelings anymore. I was holding proof. The folder on my laptop was called Records. Plain, cold, unmistakable. Inside, screenshots, bank logs, altered permissions, and access logs from the family email account. The same account I'd built from scratch during our startup days. The same account they now used without me. I was staring at that folder, jaw clenched, when my phone buzzed. Mom calling. I hesitated. It's funny how, even after everything, muscle memory kicks in. I told myself not to care, not to answer. But habit is a harder chain to break than anger. "Your dad collapsed," she said, her voice hollow. "At the hardware store. Paramedics are taking him to Eastview Medical. No emotion, no context, just facts tossed like a headline. Before she even hung up, I was halfway to the door. The drive blurred by. I couldn't recall a single stoplight, only the tightness in my chest and the looping reel of childhood memories that ambushed me. Every emergency, every incident growing up, Valora got the call. I was the afterthought, the one they contacted when everyone else was busy. Yet, somehow, I was always the one who stayed late, who kept watch, who filled the fridge after they got home. I pulled into the hospital lot and jogged through the automatic doors. "I'm here for Edward Matthews," I told the front desk, breath short. The intake nurse typed something, paused, and looked up with a polite, detached smile. "I'm sorry, you're not listed as a primary contact. Without authorization, I can't give you any information or allow access." My mouth went dry. "I am his daughter." She nodded like she'd heard it before. "I understand. But you're not on the list." I opened my mouth to protest, but then she appeared. Valora. She walked in like she'd just stepped out of a catalog shoot. Oversized sunglasses, pressed blouse, leather tote, not a strand of hair out of place. She didn't even look around, just walked straight to the counter, signed her name, and was escorted in like royalty. I stood there, frozen, watching my sister disappear behind the doors, while his daughter too was told to sit and wait. So I did. I sat in the waiting room, beside a humming vending machine, in a chair that felt like it was bolted to the floor. Time slowed. 1 hour, then 2. No update, no text, no glance in my direction. It hit me that I wasn't just being excluded from the hospital, was being erased. I pulled out my phone and tried to log into the shared family business account. Locked out. Password incorrect. Recovery options changed. Security questions I'd never set. Then a notification blinked on screen. Unrecognized login attempt from Charleston, SC. Valoris City. Valoris home. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I didn't demand an explanation. I let it sink in. Some truths don't shout. They settle like dust on untouched shelves, quiet but undeniable. The doctor came out around hour 3. I watched as he walked directly to Valora and my mother, who had arrived at some point without me noticing. He spoke to them with hushed authority, their nods solemn, hands folded tightly. Not once did anyone turn around to check if I was still there. I stood, walked out. No one stopped me. That evening, my apartment felt colder than usual. I poured sparkling water into a wine glass and stood by the window, watching the city soften into dusk. It was a strange, quiet, not hollow, not lonely, just honest. The kind of quiet that lets you breathe after years of bracing. At the table, I opened my laptop and started something new. Power of attorney, healthcare proxy, living will. Each form had a line that read, emergency contact. I backspaced every name. Then I typed, Aubrey Delaney, Esquires, my attorney. It felt surgical, necessary, like stitching your own wound so it can finally stop bleeding. I printed each form, signed them, and placed them in a labeled envelope. Then, I slipped them into my locked filing cabinet. One drawer closed. Later that night, I drove back to Eastview Knot to visit. Not for closure. I had left my wallet in the lobby earlier and needed to retrieve it. On my way out, I passed a framed family photo mounted on the wall near the elevators. It was from the 20th anniversary of our family business. I remembered it clearly. I'd driven 3 hours to make it in time. I brought the cupcakes. I had taken the group picture on my Canon. There I was, off to the side. Mid-step, blurred. Half of my face cut out of the frame. It hit me then. This wasn't an accident. It was a pattern, a plan. A decades-long erasure in slow motion. That's fitting, I whispered. That's always been the intention. But what they didn't realize was this. They should have been more careful before putting my name on the original business loan documents, the very ones that made the company possible. They tried to push me out of the story, forgetting I helped build the plot. And now, I wasn't just holding pain, I was holding leverage. It started with a call that came too late in the day and too soft in tone. "Dinner this Friday," my mother said. "Just the four of us. It's been too long." No mention of the loan, no mention of the hospital, no explanation. Just her voice, dipped in something she probably hoped would pass for warmth. I should have said no. I should have let it ring. Instead, I heard myself say, "Sure, I'll be there." Part curiosity, part the dangerous instinct that still wanted to believe there was something in this family worth salvaging. Friday evening, I drove across the bridge to the family home, the one Valora now called our house, though she hadn't paid a cent toward it. The lights were already on when I pulled up. Inside, the dining room was dressed like it was expecting a senator. Cloth napkins, candles, music that was just soft enough to unsettle me. Valora was already seated, wine glass in hand. She didn't stand when I walked in. "You made it," she said, like I was the guest, not the sister. Mom came from the kitchen with a roast she absolutely hadn't made herself. Dad sat at the head of the table, quiet, fork already in hand, like he was preparing for a meal and nothing else. I took the chair farthest from Valora and let my bag rest on the floor next to me. No one mentioned the lawsuit. No one mentioned the forged documents. We started with salad and the weather. Midway through dinner, my mother folded her hands and leaned forward slightly. "We've all had a tough few months. I think it's time we put this tension behind us." Valora followed seamlessly. "Agreed. This drama with the lawyer. It's exhausting and unnecessary. Let's just drop it." The pivot was so rehearsed, so transparent, I almost laughed. "This isn't about closure," I said, setting my fork down. "You didn't invite me here to eat. You invited me here to surrender." Mom blinked. Valora smiled without her eyes. "I don't want to fight," she said. "You've always been the emotional one, Celine. Let's be practical." Practical. That's what they called it when they rewrote history and handed me the cleanup bill. I reached into my purse, pulled out a printed page, and unfolded it slowly. "Do you want to know what practical looks like to me?" I placed it on the table between the wine glasses. It was a scanned copy of Grandpa's original will, the one I'd received anonymously weeks earlier. My name was on it, listed clearly, specifically. Celine Anderson Strategic Asset Transfer, 25% shares. Valora didn't touch the paper. Mom's face stayed carefully neutral, but her hands tightened around her napkin. "You changed it?" I said. "Or you let someone else do it? Either way, you erased me from more than a dinner table." Mom sighed like I was being difficult. "Your grandfather wasn't in his right mind when he first drafted that." "So you decided he didn't mean it?" I asked. "Or you just decided it was easier this way?" No answer. I stood up slowly, my voice level. "If any of you attempt to exploit my silence again, I won't just defend, I'll expose. I have documentation, timestamps, and a memory that works just fine." I pushed my chair in. "Enjoy dessert." I left the will on the table and walked out without looking back. They smiled over dessert while their knives were still wet. The next morning, I opened my front door to a legal envelope and a war they thought I'd never fight. It was thick, too formal for junk, and too heavy to ignore. The return address read Grayson and Baxter, LLP. My gut told me exactly who had sent it before I peeled the flap open. Inside, a complaint, filed officially, naming me as the cause of reputational harm and financial interference. My own family was suing me, not quietly, not symbolically, but on record with legal teeth. The language was clinical, accusatory. It stated that my reckless behavior had destabilized Anderson & Kodal's public image and disrupted contractual relationships. Of course, it made no mention of my name being used without permission. No word about forged signatures or scrubbed history. They had turned the mess they made into a weapon and pointed it at me. I stood in the hallway, barefoot, robe still on, rereading that letter under a cold slice of morning light. But instead of shaking, I walked back inside, closed the door, and clicked open my laptop. I didn't cry. I categorized. I labeled folders: loan evidence, speech theft, email threads, Will versions. By the time the coffee had finished brewing, I had a timeline pulled together, one that would hold up in court. Every missed message, every deleted reference, every document with my name attached to their work. No more assumptions. No more hoping they'd fix it. I printed the bank's fraud report, saved a screenshot of my name still visible on the loan account metadata, archived copies of emails showing who last edited the marketing pitch. It was Valor always Valora. I knew this time I wouldn't be fighting for clarity. I'd be fighting to take my name back. That night, around 10, my phone lit up with an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. Celine? A male voice, quiet but deliberate. Yes. Who is this? There was a short pause. You don't know me, but I used to work under Valoran, her PR team. I handled the website copy, the social engagement schedule, all of it. I said nothing, letting him keep going. I saw what she did to you. I saw her upload your campaign files, edit out your signature line, and slap her own name on them. I didn't say anything back then. I needed the job. But I've been watching. I can't ignore it anymore. My throat tightened, but I held my tone steady. Why now? He exhaled. Because you're not the one who should be under fire. I'll sign a statement. You want metadata confirmations? I still have some of the drafts. I backed up everything. After the call ended, I sat still for several minutes. No tears. Just a surge of something deeper, vindication, not yet public, but present. I pulled out a blank legal pad and started writing. Names, dates, events. One by one. I drafted a reply to the lawsuit, typed out my counterclaims, then sent a message to a lawyer I trusted from a previous client job. The next day, I met with her over lunch in a quiet corner of a downtown cafe. She read the papers silently, then looked up. You have a case, she said, and it's stronger than theirs. We scheduled mediation. Quiet, no press. I wasn't going for spectacle. I was going for resolution. That evening, after I'd finalized the affidavit, I sent one email to my entire family. Subject line, clarification, message. My silence was never an admission of guilt. It was a courtesy you mistook for permission. And that was it. No greetings, no sign-off, no second chances. I closed my laptop, set it aside, and let the silence stay, for once, on my terms. They didn't think I'd fight back. They thought I'd disappear quietly. They were wrong. The moment they saw my lawyer walk into that room, their smiles finally cracked. We walked into mediation that morning, like it was just another legal formality, but I wasn't just carrying a binder or a legal team. I was carrying the truth, and this time, it was ready to speak for itself. 2 nights before the hearing, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by the quiet hum of the city and the soft scratch of my pen against a legal pad. The couch was buried in papers, my laptop fan whirring as it opened my old archive drive. I'd been asked by my attorney to provide original, time-stamped evidence that I was the creator of the campaign materials at the center of Valora's lawsuit. What Valora had submitted were not just lies, they were manipulations. Her legal team had produced PDFs and rebranded files with altered names, some even bearing my old initials in the footer, like a breadcrumb trail of false collaboration. At first glance, it might have looked like shared work, but anyone who knew digital footprints knew the truth was in the metadata. I opened one of the original project files, right-clicked, and scrolled to Properties, then Details. Created by Celine Design. Date: 8 months before Valoris version. Last modified. Unchanged. That was all the confirmation I needed. I took screenshots of every detail, every date, every log entry, every untouched file version. I compiled it all into a folder and emailed it to my attorney that night, labeling the message, Proof of Origin. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like restoration. Like I was reclaiming something no one else had the right to twist. The following evening, just as I was about to shut down for the night, my phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. I ignored the first ring, then the second. I was about to let it go to voicemail when something in me said, "Pick up, Celine? I paused. The voice was familiar, hesitant. Ansel? He was Valora's former PR assistant, the quiet one who always looked like he was swallowing back objections in meetings, who never spoke unless directly addressed. He sounded nervous, like he wasn't sure this call was a good idea. I kept something, he said, voice low. I thought maybe you'd need it one day. He explained that Valora had once filmed a pitch video, bragging about how she'd taken over the campaign you built. She wanted to use it to boost her personal brand, but later scrapped it. What she didn't realize was that her phone had auto-synced to the shared drive, and Ansel still had access. He sent me a link with a password. I opened it, expecting to see her. But it wasn't Valora in the frame. It was Grandpa. Slouched in his recliner, eyes soft but alert, voice thin but unwavering. Celine is the only one who sees where this company can truly go, he said. The others just want to keep it small comfortable. But she builds for the future. The timestamp? 3 weeks before he passed away. I didn't cry. I just stared at the screen for a long time, my hand hovering over the trackpad. Then I downloaded the file and saved it under a new folder. Legacy untouched. By morning, my attorney had added it to our evidence package alongside the metadata screenshots, the audit logs, and Ansel's signed statement. The case was no longer just about files or branding. It was about intent, identity, inheritance, not in the financial sense, but in the recognition of contribution. And I wasn't finished. I went ahead and ordered a full credit audit and a property search for anything tied to the Anderson family name that had been submitted using my credentials. I wasn't going to let anyone cash in on the back of my work, especially not Valora. That afternoon, my phone buzzed again. A text from my cousin. Valora's spiraling. Posts are getting deleted. Aunt Irene said she hasn't seen her this pale since prom night. I didn't reply. Not out of coldness, just clarity. Later that night, an email popped up from Aunt Irene herself. They're scared of you. I never thought I'd see the day. I stepped out onto my apartment balcony, the sky heavy with storm clouds, mug of black tea warming my hands. The cactus that used to sit beside my chair was gone, overwatered and wilted during a chaotic season. Its pot remained, empty but still standing, waiting for something more deserving to take root. That night, I didn't feel bitter. I didn't feel like a victim. I wasn't hoping someone would change their mind or finally validate me. I wasn't chasing revenge. I was reclaiming what had always been mine without apology, without begging. For years, they had taken credit for my vision, minimized my presence, and sold my voice under their names. Now, piece by piece, I was taking it back, starting with my name. They spent years taking credit for what I built. Now, I was about to take everything back, starting with my name. The mediation wasn't held in a courtroom, but it might as well have been. A sleek law office in downtown Charleston, all glass and stone and cold coffee in untouched mugs. Valora arrived 15 minutes early, in a cream blazer and heels too loud for the carpet. Her lawyer followed closely behind, clutching a binder thick with motions and mock humility. I sat across from them, silent. No makeup, no performance. Just a gray sweater, jeans, and the only binder that mattered me. Each tab labeled, Truth. We started without pleasantries. My lawyer led with the timeline. Not accusations, just facts. Metadata from project files showing my authorship. Version histories that couldn't be altered. Server logs. Then came the video. Grandpa's voice echoed from the conference room speaker. If this company ever thrives again, it'll be because of Celine. Valora's fingers tensed around her pen. Her attorney reached to mute it halfway through. The mediator stopped him. When the video ended, no one spoke for a beat. Then, my lawyer slid across Ansel's signed declaration. Another piece of truth, small, but irrefutable. The mediator skimmed, then looked up. We need to consider Celine's counterclaim before moving forward. Fraud, identity misuse, reputational harm. Valora's lawyer leaned in, voice lowered. We'd be willing to discuss a quiet resolution. I didn't flinch. This isn't about quiet. The mediator paused the session, stepped out with the attorneys. Valora didn't say a word. Her eyes didn't meet mine. 10 minutes later, they returned. My name was formally removed from the disputed loan documents. Valora was listed in my place pending investigation. My father sat at the edge of the table. Still, his lawyer scribbled notes as if they were too little, too late. After we wrapped, I walked out first. I didn't need to look back. There was nothing left there worth seeing. That evening, I got an email from Valora. The subject line, "You win." No greeting. Just 2 lines. "Congrats. You got what you wanted." Attached was a photo of my old bedroom. Empty, walls bare, carpet stained. The bed I used to read under? Gone. So were the shelves, the window seat cushions, the hooks where I'd hung my art. Beneath the photo, "House sold." No forwarding address. I stared at it longer than I should have. Then I forwarded the email to my lawyer and closed my laptop. The win didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like standing alone in the ruins of a house someone else burned down and being told I should be grateful for the view. Still, there was no more pretending. They had built a stage to perform my erasure. I turned it into a platform for truth. And that was enough. Vindication doesn't always feel like a win. Sometimes it feels like standing in an empty house, holding a truth no one clapped for. The next morning, I woke up with no unread messages, no legal threats, just quiet. And I didn't know what to do with it. For the first time in what felt like years, my day didn't begin with the ding of a court reminder or a notification from my attorney about some new emergency Valoris team had stirred up. There was no email from the county clerk, no message from a cousin playing double agent, no cryptic text saying, "Have you seen what your sister just posted?" Just sunlight filtering softly through linen curtains, a breeze through the cracked window, and the quiet hum of the ceiling fan above my bed. It wasn't peace, not fully, but it was silence. And silence, after everything, felt sacred. I walked barefoot into the kitchen and brewed a small pot of coffee. As it dripped, I traced my fingers along the edge of the round table in the corner. It was chipped and wobbly, a second-hand find from years ago when I still believed that objects needed backstories to matter. When I thought meaning came from what had already been lived, not what I might live into. I sat with my coffee, letting it cool, thinking of all the versions of me who had sat in rooms like this, waiting for apologies that never came. I thought of the last time I walked out of the family house, not in anger, but in clarity. I remembered the too bright dining room, the passive-aggressive passing of dinner rolls, the clinking of cutlery, and veiled threats dressed as traditions. And I remembered how it felt to stand, say nothing, and walk away. Now, the house was no longer ours. It had been sold. And with it went the backyard where I once scraped my knees, the window ledge where I used to journal late at night, the bedroom that once held every version of my childhood dreams. All gone. A few days later, I returned to my storage unit to pick up the final box. It was mostly junk-old school supplies, mismatched socks, a broken desk lamp I'd always meant to fix but never did. Near the bottom, tucked between dusty yearbooks and outdated course catalogs, I found something unexpected. A letter, folded neatly, in my own childhood handwriting. I paused. My name was written in soft cursive across the front. To Mom. I unfolded it slowly. It was dated nearly 15 years ago. I was 10. The paper was filled with apologies, long, careful sentences where a little girl begged for forgiveness for things no child should ever carry guilt for. Spilling juice, talking back, crying too loud, being too much. I'd written, "I promise I'll try harder to be good." I never sent it. Maybe I was too scared. Or maybe, even back then, I knew it wouldn't matter. I read it once, and my chest tightened not from pain, but from recognition. Then I folded it again and placed it in a folder marked Keep. Not for nostalgia. For proof. Proof that even back then, I knew what it meant to silence myself to stay loved. That afternoon, a small cream-colored envelope appeared in my mailbox. No return address, No postmark. Inside was a single card. The handwriting was unmistakable. Hope you're well. We're all adjusting. No name, no invitation. Just that. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I slid the card behind a row of books on the shelf right, next to the printed copy of Grandpa's original will. I didn't keep it as a token. I kept it as a line in the sand. Because I didn't need their apology. I needed their absence. 3 weeks later, I boarded a flight to Seattle. There was no public announcement, no dramatic farewell, just a quiet decision, a checked bag, and a seat by the window. A new consulting role waited for me there. New city, new skyline, new timeline. During the interview, the woman across the desk, smart eyes, blazer without pretense, asked me, "What would you say is your strongest trait as a strategist?" I didn't have to think. Boundaries. She tilted her head, then smiled like she knew exactly what that cost to learn. That's rare. Now, on my final morning in Charleston, I drove to the shore. I stood by the waterline, the wind tugging at my coat, waves brushing the sand with slow persistence. I closed my eyes and thought about the girl who used to come here with Valora skipping stones, arguing over sea glass, begging for attention in the only ways she knew how. That girl had learned to shrink herself into silence, to trade her voice for a place at the table, to twist her boundaries into apologies. I whispered goodbye to her, not out of regret, but out of gratitude. She carried me through more than I realized, and I had finally learned to set her down with love and walk forward. I didn't need closure. Closure was their word, their excuse. I didn't need reconciliation. I needed autonomy. I needed to live in a world where my name was mine again. They blamed me. She clapped. I left. And this isn't the beginning of the end. This is the end of the beginning. Looking back, I realize now that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away, not in anger, not in fear, but in clarity. When I stopped begging to be seen and started believing in the value of my own voice, everything changed. I didn't get the apology I once longed for. I didn't get justice in a way that makes headlines, but I got my name back. I got my peace. If you're watching this and you've ever felt invisible in your own family, I hope you hear me when I say, you are not the problem for wanting respect. You're not difficult for setting boundaries. And choosing yourself does not make you selfish, it makes you free. What about you? Have you ever been the one who walked away from a family that didn't choose you back? Or maybe you stayed. What helped you find your strength? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. If this video resonated with you, if it touched something in your heart, drop a 1 in the comments or share where you're watching from. And if it didn't connect with you, I'm open to hearing that too. Let me know why and where you tuned in from. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more true stories like the stories that speak to the quiet battles we fight and the strength we often forget we have.